Welcome to the All People podcast, where we talk all people all the time. I'm your host, Elisa Southall. My goal is to improve candidate and employee experiences as well as company cultures throughout U.S. employers. We do this by leading with empathy, diversity, inclusion, equality, teamwork, and transparency. Come on this journey with me. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the All People podcast, where we talk all people all the time. I am here with Tonya Montella. She is from Tonya Empowers.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Alyssa. This is great.
No problem, Tonya. So Tonya is a Fortune 500 hiring manager who's turned women's career coach. And on her website, you'll see that it says transforming ambitious women into career changers and lifelong ladder climbers, which is super fantastic. Obviously, being a woman, right? To me, empowering women is super, super important. Can you tell me why you got into this, Tonya? Why you thought that creating a space for women was important?
I would narrow it down to two reasons. One, I was noticing that over the years, women, yes, also men sometimes were seeking me out and, approaching me for career guidance, help with their resume, advice with difficult situations they were facing at work. But it really started to pick up speed for whatever reason, the beginning of last year of 2022. So that was kind of when I said, let me lean into this more than I have before. And I would say the other part of my why is really because I never had that sort of guidance myself. I always say I had the bad habit of always trying to navigate my career alone and saying like, oh, I can just figure it out, or, I'm a woman, I got this, and finding all these excuses as to why I didn't need help when in fact I really could have used it. It really would have saved me some time and probably would have gotten me further, if I'm being honest, in my career, in my 9 to 5 than where I am today. So those are the two reasons that really stuck out to me that made me say, I really want to do this. Not to mention the sense of excitement and fulfillment it brings me, which is above and beyond anything I've ever felt in the corporate space.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. I offer free job seeker services to individuals as much as I can. And the fulfillment you get from helping other people with just the knowledge that you have, right? I mean, you're not doing anything other than just providing them sheer guidance.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And even just seeing the shift when you're speaking to somebody, and again, near and dear to my heart is other women. But when you start the conversation and they feel very defeated, they feel very lost, they feel very stuck. And then seeing the shift at the end where they're saying things like, okay, I feel like I can do this. I feel a lot better now that we've talked about it. Like little things like that, even just in one call, can be so impactful to somebody's life and, equally impactful for me because having that lasting effect on somebody is just really important to me.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm with you there. When we think about the lifelong ladder climber part of it, right? We always hear as women like the glass ceiling or like, all the men are sitting at the leadership table. And sometimes I feel like when there are women, right, they're usually in my space, like the CHROs, right? But they still report to somebody who's a white male. And so when we look at that ladder climbing, I think, and you probably can speak to this better than I can, but would you say that part of that challenge is because cultures don't already have this in place, or is it because we're not advocating hard enough?
Ooh, good question. Because I feel like it's a combination of the two. And, I can't say the blanket statement that cultures don't have it, because I think probably more, my guess is, of course, I have my blinders on because, in my 9 to 5, I know how that business operates. But I think probably more today than ever before, companies are starting to embrace more of this supporting aspect of encouraging, more mentorship and more development discussions and trainings and resources and things like that. But as it relates to, again, honing in on women specifically, I do tend to think it comes to that side of where you said, we don't ask for it enough. I find that with a lot of women, we don't tend to, I said it myself, I never used to ask for help or guidance, right? Like we don't tend to raise our hands and say we're in need of something, right? We often feel like it's a sign that, maybe we're a little bit weak in a particular area, or maybe we aren't, an expert in a certain way. I think we have all these limiting beliefs that make us think that if we raise our hand, it's going to be perceived in a negative way. So I do think it's a combination of the two.
I agree with you. And I think in terms of those limiting beliefs, I think society has sort of taught us those limiting beliefs of, if you raise your hand, then you're considered vulnerable and emotional, and then you're categorized into this grouping, right?
Yeah.
And that can be really challenging. And I think, and this is probably something you help people with too, but when it comes to climbing the career ladder, that also means negotiating your compensation, which for men is a lot easier, right? They can walk into a room and say, I want this number, and it is what it is. But to that point of like, we're not asking for it, right? We have to be more sort of aggressive when it comes to our negotiating for a career. Do you agree?
I agree wholeheartedly. When it comes to that, when it comes to, our bandwidth being too thin and needing more support, and just being honest about that. Even when it comes to job seekers, especially in today's market, I talk to a lot of women about ways to be, one of my clients put it as crafty. I was going to say like gritty or like assertive, and you know what I mean? But yeah, I guess it's all the same. But really just being a go-getter. And the way that I like to talk about it is like taking ownership in your career. Again, when I think about my history, I think about the fact that for a long time, I really kind of sat in the back seat of my career, just kind of hoping things would happen and hoping, I would get promotions and get raises and things like that. And oftentimes it would, but again, so much more could have happened for me, or could have been opened up for me, had I raised my hand and just spoken up about it and said what it is that I need or I'm looking for. And it would have, I think, come my way more easily than me just trying to like scratch and claw for the thing.
Yeah, and I think to your point about bandwidth, I think often as women, right, we tend to take on a lot more because that's just, it gets thrust on us, then we take it on, and we don't say anything about it because, again, we don't want to sort of rock the boat too much. But unfortunately, right, when we draw ourselves too thin, then we can't do what we like to do or what we are good at well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually work on this with one woman in particular. She tends to want to have her hands in a lot of different things. And I let her know I admire that. And I think, leadership in her company would admire that as well. But just knowing that you need to be very careful about that. Like you want to show yourself and prove yourself, of course, but there's a fine balance, because to your point, if you start to spread yourself too thin by doing all the things, which, like you said, as women, we tend to do, you can't be as effective in any one thing because you're doing all these different things. So I like the way you put that. I think that's really important for anyone to remember. But again, my my heart is with women, and that's where I see it show up the most. So that's where I come from.
And when you're coaching women, primarily they're ambitious, but they're maybe, not where they want to be in their career, what advice are you giving them? Are you having them sort of go to their internal resources, like developing mentors internally? Are you helping them navigate conversations? What does that look like for you? And it's probably different for everybody, but just a few things maybe.
Yeah, good question. So there's two particular audiences that I cater to. One are the women who are looking to transition careers, step into a role or an industry they've never been in. And then the other side is those women who are looking to climb the proverbial corporate ladder. So I'll speak to those two separate audiences. For the women looking to transition careers, oftentimes it's giving them the reassurance that, they have the transferable skills to go into the role that they're looking to achieve, helping them to see things a little bit differently. Because they often have all these self-doubts and all these limiting beliefs that maybe they're not qualified for the role, or maybe they don't know how to sell themselves for it or tell the story about, why they want to transition careers. So I would say that's for that particular audience. When it comes to the women who already have a job and they're just looking to advance in their careers, oftentimes with them, it's having them think in different ways. I think a lot of times the women that I speak to, at least, see things as a barrier when in fact, when they tell me the story, I see it as an opportunity. So I often have to give them a bit of a different perspective to help them see it in a different way, which opens their eyes to the fact that it is an opportunity to either grow or learn or whatever it is, to kind of open that door to allow them to say, oh, that is, something for me to latch onto and something that I can use to fuel my advancement in this career. So I'm going to go after it rather than feel like it's a closed door for myself.
That's interesting. You take their barriers and turn them into opportunities for them. That's wonderful.
I guess I never thought about that.
Do you find that some of the women that you help to coach and maybe have grown the ladder, do you feel like they start to sort of implement some of that mentorship in their organizations for like up and coming women?
I don't observe that. To be fair, I also don't ask the question. So maybe I'll begin to ask that now that you bring it up, because it would be very impactful to almost pay it forward, right? I don't know that that's happening today. Again, my sense is that it's not, but my goal is to, the way I always phrase it is like scale my impact. I've been working with women a lot just at a one-on-one capacity, but, in LinkedIn, for example, I see all these women tagging me and constantly saying the impact that I've had on them. And I'm like, I gotta find a way to just, connect with more women and give them more of this kind of guidance and advice that they truly need, whether they know it or not. Again, maybe there's somebody like me who's like, nope, I'm good. I can do this. I can figure it out. So my hope is that in doing that and having a very narrow focus on scaling my impact this year and beyond, it'll start to create more of that trickle effect where they will start to pay it forward.
And I think you could even create a community, right? I mean, you could build sort of a Tonya Empowers community,
yeah.
Where you could create like mentorship for women who don't have it internally in the organization or don't see it at their home life or in their community, right?
Yes, that is the goal. Actually, you read my mind. I'm actually, you saw it today. I'm opening up a group program. So that is the intention behind that, to have more of a sense of community. Yes, I can help women individually one-on-one, and some women do need that, but some women also really flourish in more of a group setting to hear what other women are up against, to hear the advice that I'm giving to them. They may not have the issue at the time, but they can keep it in their mind for when it does come up, because it's likely to. That sense of community, having that support system that you can lean on others. And I'll be offering more things throughout the year for my other audience that I talked about before. But yeah, that is absolutely the goal. I want to scale my impact by way of that, but also foster a sense of community, because I think we're stronger together.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. We are better in numbers for sure. I had a podcast guest on what'll be last week now, and her name is Sarah Blankenship, and she focuses on Generation X. That's her generation, but she focuses primarily on that. And one of the things she mentioned was that she recommends people do a career audit every year to sort of understand, are they happy in their role? Do they, what are they making? What do they need to be making or want to be making? Do you recommend something similar to your job seekers?
I do. And actually, I like that she defines a cadence for it specifically. I had never thought about that in particular, but yeah, I think a yearly recurrence is a great way to think about it. I always frame it in the sense of, when we talk about like being recession-proof in our careers, like always being ready so that if the ball drops and you do experience a layoff or whatever the case might be, maybe you just completely hate where you're at and you just want to go somewhere else, that you don't have to get ready, that you're already ready. And part of that being exactly what that guest said, taking a moment to pause and reflect is something that I talk about a lot. It's something I don't think we do enough. We're very much in like a rat race every single day. So taking a moment to just take a step back, kind of zoom out and see what's happening, and then realize how we feel about it. And then once we have that moment of realization, then acting on it to do something. If you love what's happening, great, keep doing what you're doing. If you don't, what do you need to do to change your environment or your situation to make it more appealing to you, to make it more aligned with what it is you're seeking out of the event?
That's awesome. And for your career transitioners, right? I'm working with a few of those myself, and part of what we're talking about is creating their ideal job description, right? Because what happens is we get stuck in these, I'll say stuck in these roles, right? Or we get, into these roles that then become bigger or different than what we thought. And our resume is sort of tailored to that role versus like the role that we want, right? So we're looking at the job description saying, what is ideal for me? And how can I align these bullet points to what I want so that every job I apply to, I'm not just doing out of desperation, right? How do you give guidance in that way?
That's a great question, because I think my brain starts to go in a number of different directions when you say what you said. Well, for example, one place I go is, as a hiring manager in my 9 to 5, every time I'm hiring for my team, and by the way, please no one light up my inbox. I'm not currently hiring. If I was, you all would be the first to know. But when I am hiring for my team and I'm building the job descriptions, it's almost become a moment of humor, because I'm thinking, okay, are we creating a unicorn here? Like, are we looking for a person that doesn't exist? Like, sometimes it tends to be that way. So the way that feeds into the conversations that I have with career transitioners is like just the concept of not expecting yourself to meet all the qualifications. When it comes to your point, aligning your resume and all your materials to the job that you want, I think is so important. But I also talk to them about, making sure that you're using the same language that you see in the job descriptions that you want. So backing up a step, part of the process I take my clients through is making sure that they have clarity on the job that they want, so that they can then, everything after that just kind of falls in line. So yeah, part of it is certainly, making sure that you're seeking out the things that you want to do. And I wouldn't say not doing the things you don't want to do, but just being very clear and upfront about it. Again, raising your hand and saying like, oh, okay, well, that aspect of it, I'm not really looking for that, what I would do instead, or the way that I would approach it instead, that sort of thing. So I try and make sure that they understand that there's kind of a balance between the two, and making sure that they approach it in that way.
Doing a lot of boundary setting. That's definitely important. And I imagine too, for you, when you're looking at these career transitioners, right? They probably have to start by doing some soul searching.
100%.
And that's part of your coaching process with them, right?
Yes. Yeah. We go deep on, the things that they actually enjoy doing, things that they're all naturally very good at, things that just come easy to them. We go deep on their why, because I want them to keep in mind the reason why they like doing the thing that they like to do, because that shows up in a number of different ways, right? When you're telling your story to an employer and you're explaining why it is that you're interested in that particular role or industry. Yeah, we go into a lot of things, and it's interesting to watch, because when you see the light bulbs go off, and in instances where, women start to uncover jobs that they had never even considered for themselves because they've done that deeper introspective work, it opens the door again. I'll go back to opening the door, opening people's eyes to opportunities that they may not have thought of before. Things become very exciting for them when that happens, and they start to, have more ambition and more drive to make their career change. So it's definitely a fun experience to walk people through that process.
I can see that that's probably very exciting and rewarding. I know personally, like I from an HR standpoint, right, know that like titles are not universal. I mean, every company has different titles, and it's obnoxious, right? It's almost like you wish that they were universal. But that being said, like I'll just go on LinkedIn with my job seekers and I'll just type in like, okay, you like research. Let's type in the word research and just see what the heck happens, because who knows what the title is that you're looking for.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that. I did that same thing with one of my clients just last week, and she was like, "Oh, okay, so don't like put in the specific, like you're just putting in that one word." And I'm like, "Yeah, because look." She's like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, it's enlightening. It's fun to discover, right? Discover self, discover opportunities, just really start to go on a path to define what it is that you want out of your career, what it is that you want to be doing day to day. I know people talk about like the job that you love and things like that. I always try to remind people, you don't have to wake up like, can't wait to get to work. Like, I don't know truthfully, how many people are waking up saying that and rushing to work and,
Maybe you and I are, but
that's true. That's true. Yeah. So just making sure that you're doing the things that you enjoy doing and that you're going to do a great job at it, because that's going to set you up for success and being able to advance naturally. And again, not having to scratch and claw.
so on a different topic, right? It's more of a heavier topic. A lot of women and individuals are having a hard time finding jobs right now. The markets are really saturated.
Yeah.
And I think some of that has to do with company processes are in the way and part of the problem, right? I mean, you talked about yourself, job descriptions and how those can get in the way of our hiring process. But in general, the market is pretty saturated. How do you help women in a market like this keep from getting discouraged? Because I'm seeing a lot of that on social media.
Yeah, it's such a great question, such an important thing to talk through, because like you said, it's so prevalent and understood, right? Like the job search process is taxing anytime, never mind in a job market like we're seeing today. So the thing that I always, again, I go back to sharing with them ways to be more, again, I'll use my client's term, crafty. I would like to say gritty and like assertive, but giving them guidance on ways to be a little more creative in their approach to stand out from the crowd. That is a huge thing that I think is important for any job seeker today, is any opportunity you can find to stand out from the crowd, whether it be the way that you're phrasing things in your resume, the story that you're telling in your cover letter, the way that you're reaching out to recruiters or following up with them, or, sending a thank you note after the phone screen of the interview. Anything like that, to just be a little more aggressive than you may have in the past or that you may have thought about doing, is, I think, really important in today's job market. So I talk a lot about that.
That's fantastic. And the other thing I've been seeing personally is resumes are sort of becoming a formality and not the way you get jobs, right? It's about how you're presenting yourself on social media, how you're showing your value to an organization. When you're coaching women, are you also coaching them on how to enhance their social media presence as well as their resume?
Yeah. So again, along the topic of like, being a little more gritty and having more crafty ways to show up and show up uniquely. I talk a lot about that. Just thinking more strategically about the approach, just being, again, more assertive, to go after what it is that you want and to make sure that you're making those connections. I talk to women about having a job search strategy just to really define their plan. Like, how often are you going to be networking? How many jobs are you looking to apply to each week? When are you going to be checking the postings? Like, how are you going to be establishing these connections to be able to network with people? And what are you trying to get out of it? Things like that, just to keep, kind of give them like a North Star, so that going back to the overwhelm conversation, they don't feel so overwhelmed. I can't say that. You're going to feel overwhelmed, but the idea is to reduce overwhelm as much as possible.
Yeah. And like you were saying, I mean, even if you're not working, applying to jobs and moving through that process feels like a full-time job. And then if you are working, like that's like you're working 2 full-time jobs to get this process completed. And so it can be draining. And, I've talked to people who are like, I've applied to over 100 jobs, or I've applied to whatever. And there are a couple of conversations that I have with them. One being like, you've applied to 100 jobs. Are you really narrowing down what you are looking for? Right. And then on the flip side of that, I always try, and it's really hard when you're in the headspace of like, this is so disappointing, but like the universe has a plan for you, right? Trust in the universe. Like if you have to just like put blind faith in it, figure out how, because you have a plan and a path, no matter what deity, religious God, religious being, universe you believe in, there's something that you're supposed to do. And when you get rejected, that's for an intention, right?
Yeah, absolutely. One step closer to your yes, they always say, and I truly believe in that. I do also try and give context, right? Like, when it's been a couple of months, for example, and someone's feeling very discouraged, I try and, give them context to say, well, in general, I'm seeing that it's taking people, anywhere from 6 to 8 months on average to land a job. Obviously, that varies greatly from person to person and depending on how aggressive they're being in their job search, and how consistent they're being, I should say. But I try and also ground them in that and say, like, listen, it's taking everybody time because to your point, the market is so saturated. So just know that up front. I try and share that as early as possible. I try and be careful too, because I don't want people to feel discouraged by that timeline. But I think it's important to understand what everyone is up against in this market and to be able to set expectations early so that as that calendar starts to go along and you're still in your search, yes, you're going to get discouraged, but to know that, there is end in sight on average, this is, the amount of time it's taking people, and just to try and remain patient.
And you had said something earlier about job seekers when they're applying to jobs, right? That they don't need every piece of criteria that's on the job description. And I've heard that multiple times. And I sort of laugh, but then I have to explain to them, like, from a hiring perspective, right? You're a hiring manager, you probably know this. When I, as an HR person, give the hiring manager a job description, they update the first 3 bullet points and then, like, everything else is fine because they don't want to deal with the whole beast of a job description. And so some of those arbitrary things that are on there, like education or what have you, they may have been on there for years and the hiring manager is not fixing them. Even the job responsibilities, right? Like, you can't have everything. And so I'm coming and saying to employers, like, let's weigh them, right? Let's say, like, this is 75%, 25%, 10%, so that people get it. But I feel like a lot of the times what's discouraging these job seekers is the fact that, like, they feel like not only do they have to match every bullet point exactly, but also that, like, they go on and apply and the job's been open for 2 hours and there's 1,000 applicants.
Yeah. When you mentioned sometimes the process is broken, I thought of exactly that. Like, I just wish these job postings would come down after like a threshold of applicants is met so that people aren't seeing that number and feeling like I don't even have a chance. I'm not even going to put my name in the hat. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's interesting you share that because I'm starting to rethink when I build job descriptions. I typically build them from scratch. So to know that you're actually like giving them something to start with, I'm like, oh, that's really nice.
Well, what we would do in HR is, like, when I was in corporate, we would give them, like, what we had posted the last time, right? So it would be like, here was what was posted the last time. Now make your updates. And I can tell you, like, they only updated the first 3 bullet points. And honestly, like, of all that, right, the recruiter knew which things the hiring manager actually cared about. So I always said, like, if you have the top 3 things that are on those bullet points, apply. Like, because the recruiter is going to tell you if you meet the rest of the criteria or if you meet the core criteria, right? And as far as those, like, thousands of applicants that have applied, the way I try to encourage job seekers is by telling them, sometimes there are going to be people that apply that are either underqualified or overqualified or aren't in the geographic region or are out of the country, right? And there are going to be reasons why those people aren't qualified. So don't get discouraged by the number. Like, apply, but also find another way to get to that hiring manager.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. When you say, don't get discouraged by the number, just apply. Again, I share with them perspective, like, you're definitely not going to have a chance if you don't have your name in the hat. So at least give yourself a fighting chance by applying. Yeah, there's so many different reasons why, a large majority of the people. Also, again, we talk about the job market being saturated. I think when it's in the context of this conversation, it could be thought of as a positive thing because people are just kind of like spraying and praying, really, right? Like, the easy apply button is there on LinkedIn. So people are just, going crazy with that feature and applying to hundreds of jobs that don't align with their resume. Like, there's a lot of different things to it. So the number, of course, is very intimidating, I would say. But to know all the things behind it that could be disqualifying a big chunk of that group, I think is something to remember. But again, when we talk about being assertive, finding ways to get in touch with that person specifically, even if it's not the exact person, to at least look at the people within that company and try and find something close to it. Maybe then they can introduce you, like just being creative and being assertive.
Yeah, I've even suggested things like informational sessions with other employees or other hiring managers in the company, just to, at least if they don't have anything, at least to say, hey, we've met, and like maybe they know somebody that then they can refer you to.
100%. Yeah. People, you'd be surprised. I say this all the time. You'd be surprised at how much strangers are willing to help you. Number one. Number two, people like to talk about themselves. So, I'll provide my clients with like a template for a way to reach out to that person and ask for that conversation. But, when you phrase it in a way of like, I'd like to talk to you and figure out how you got to where you are, that lets them know that you see something in them. They feel very good about that, to say, oh, this person sees me as somebody that they may look up to in a way, because I've got the role that it is that they want, and they just want to pick my brain and understand how I got here. So yeah, I'm going to tell them, how I got here and how I do what I do, right? Like, who doesn't love to brag a bit about themselves?
Well, and on the flip side of that, right, it's a natural progression for them to then flip the conversation back on you and say, tell me about you. Because they're going to spend time talking about themselves, but they're not going to like end the call without hearing anything about you.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think having that be the lead in makes it an easier way to then pivot to you. And then, it goes from there.
And I didn't check with you beforehand on this, but did you hear about the resume cake woman? Did you hear about her?
I think I know what you're explaining, but please tell me more.
So she had spoken to, I think it was like a shoe store. I'm not going to say their name, but like they had an affiliate, a daughter company or something like that. And she had a conversation with the hiring manager, like we're talking about, sort of an informational session. And he had mentioned that they were having like a employee appreciation day or something like that. Well, she sent her resume on a cake to their office for this employee appreciation day or whatever they were doing, like a celebration. And because it was an employee appreciation, they were celebrating some milestone. And so she sent this cake, and it was interesting because it had her resume on it, but she doesn't live anywhere near them. So like she had to coordinate where the cake came from, and then the delivery driver. And I was like, not only did like she have to find that grit you were talking about, right? But it shows that client or that prospective company, right, that she can project manage, that she is, has the ability to like be a forward thinker and think outside the box. Like it's got all these good attributes that I was like, everybody needs to have a resume cake.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Again, when you go above and beyond, or you take just a different route that somebody else isn't taking, it could very well be a shortcut. I'd love to hear what happened to this story. Maybe it's too new to know if she got the job, but
No, this was a while ago. I don't know if they ever came out and said she got the job, but I said, even if she didn't get that job, it definitely opened the eyes of other employers to her to get a job.
Yeah. And it's going to stick in that company's memory. They're going to, next time they need a project manager or whatever it is, they're going to be like, remember that woman? We need to call her.
But standing out is super important in the process.
Oh, 1,000%.
So share with me a little bit, like if you could, tell us I know we've talked about like the sort of career changers and the ladder climbers, right? But, do you have other women that you're helping that if like you could define what those look like and how they know to come to you, or when they're at the point where they're like, I just can't anymore?
Yeah, good question. So aside from the programs that I offer, which is more aligned with those two audiences that I mentioned, I do just kind of have one-off conversations with women. Like, people can come to my site and book a free call with me. Typically, there's a couple of different instances people will do that. One, they're usually feeling stuck in terms of figuring out, what job they do want to step into next. They know that the job that they're doing or the job they had last time isn't it, but they don't know what is it. So sometimes it's just having that conversation, and then they have a bit of a boost of energy, and they have, a better sense of like what could be out there for them. And that's all they really needed. They then go take that and be on their merry way to do more of that self-discovery. And then I don't hear from them again. And that's completely fine. Sometimes women reach out to me when they're up against a difficult situation at work, and they really need more of a sense of mentorship in that moment. So I'll understand exactly what it is that's happening. I'll give them a outsider's perspective, right? A non-biased opinion. We'll talk through it a little bit more, see how what I said or what I offer lands with them. And ultimately we end up with more of a sense of, the things that they're going to do moving forward as a result of that conversation. And then they go off, and sometimes I hear back from them and they'll say, our conversation inspired them to do something different, or to, raise their hand and speak up for themselves. But sometimes it's just those one-offs where you really just need to talk it through with someone. Again, we really do need more help and guidance than I think we like to admit. But yeah, that gives them the boost that they need to just get over that hump that they might be feeling in the moment.
Okay. And do you have any upcoming events or things like that that you'd like to share or promote? That I mean, obviously we talked about when this is going to release, so keeping that in mind, do you have anything that like you'd like to encourage people to come to?
Yeah. So I have a group program for career transitioners. It's called the Career Transition Kickstarter Program. It's going to be an April cohort, so we'll meet the entire month of April. We'll have weekly calls. There's, content you'll go through online to really understand that process that has worked for me and all of my career transitions, as well as the clients that I've worked with to date. So that's happening in April. That's open for enrollment now. And then later on this year, to the point of the ladder climbers, I am going to be sharing more information about more of a membership where, women can come into the membership. There will be that support system so that on demand, if you're up against something at work, you can get that support in the moment that you need it, which I think is really important and something that is missing a little bit based on what I see from other career coaches. So that's something I'm really looking forward to opening up. But those are the two ways primarily that folks can tap into me.
Awesome. And I will drop the links to those things in the show notes for people so that they have them. And then in terms of like where people can find you, so obviously you have a website, TonyaEmpowers.com, but what other social media platforms are you on?
Yeah. So the good thing is I'm Tonya Empowers everywhere. You can find me at Tonya Empowers on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Facebook. I am on TikTok. I'll admit I'm not as heavy on TikTok. I feel like it's just the thing to do, to be completely honest. So I'm just there from time to time. But I primarily live in LinkedIn. And then I like Instagram just to show a little more of me. Sometimes I'll do behind the scenes of, my day in the life in my corporate job as a hiring manager. But those are mostly the two platforms that I hang out on. And then of course my videos are on YouTube.
That's awesome. And how does one become a Fortune 500 hiring manager? Enlighten us.
Great question. So it took a lot of time. I've worked for a number of different Fortune 500 companies and multi-million-dollar businesses. But the way that I stepped into my role as a hiring manager, again, was taking advantage of opportunities. So, and what's funny is I started as what I like to call a solo act in doing the role that I had at the time. And as I reflect back on my career, there were a number of jobs that I had where I was the only one doing the thing that I did. So I don't know why that's a theme for me. I'm going to take it as a positive thing, but I was a solo act. There needed to be more people within the function that I was working in. So when they opened up that job, I applied for it, got the job, and then it makes sense now when you say that you typically were giving job descriptions based on what the role was before. And the reason that's not happening for me is because I had to build my team from the ground up. So every role that I hire for is new to the business. So eventually, hopefully we'll get to the point where, I'm just recycling or revising, I should say, roles when we scale the team. But that's the short end of it. I mean, there's a lot of gritty stuff all in between and having to figure it out and trial and error. But that's where I say I feel that I would be further in my corporate job had I got the guidance and support that I needed so many years ago.
Yeah, definitely having a mentor is important. I mean, I feel the same way, right? And, I had great managers along the way. I had some not so great managers along the way. But I think, if I had that community of women, that what I found was rather than like empowering each other, right? They were trying to stifle you because only so many of us could grow at once. So there was like a competition aspect there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as I end every episode, I talk about the Maya Angelou quote, and the quote is, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Can you tell me a time where that might have rung true for you?
Yes, I honestly feel like, and this may sound extreme, but it really is true. Every time I get on the phone with somebody, they get off the call either messaging me or tagging me or saying something to where they say, I feel so much better. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but they often say that I feel so much better or you made me feel better. And they can't often pinpoint what it was about our conversation that made them feel better, but it's something about it. Maybe I'd have to get an outsider's perspective looking in as to I don't know if it's what I'm saying or if it's like my energy that's making them feel more open and safe and supported. But that's what I hear a lot. And that's where I feel it rings true, because I never do hear the exact thing that helped them or the moment that made them feel better. It's just, I feel so much better now.
And how does that make you feel?
Ah, so accomplished, even if it's just for that one call, right? Even if they go back to feeling like they're in a rut, just to know that I had that impact for that moment in time for that one individual is so impactful to me, because I care so much and I know what it means to not have that support, that knowing that I gave that to somebody, again, even if it was just a moment in time, is so meaningful to me.
Well, that's incredible. Thank you for being here, Tonya. We really appreciate it. And as I end every episode, lead with empathy, act with kindness. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to All People Podcast. If you enjoyed our show, I'd love for you to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. The work doesn't end here. If you want to keep the conversation going, find me on LinkedIn or Facebook, or visit my website, apeoplepartnerllc.com. Lead with empathy and act with kindness. Have a great day.